One. Okay. Now we're going. Okay, so here's the agenda. We're on Sakai Camp Recap. Really, the recap is that Chuck had a couple questions. Everyone seemed okay about progress and where we were at. Chuck asked, has any thought or discussion been given to simplifying the tool features? And he also asked, do we need 3 discussion tools that each provide unique feature sets for interface user experience to meet the major use cases rather than loading a single tool with the all too many features? And I thought those were pretty good questions, and we could even open it up to the group and we could see, well, what does everybody think about those questions?
Well, the first thing is, what 3 tools is he talking about? Is he talking about messages, forums, and I don't know what else, something else? Or is he talking about forums or forums chat messages? I just don't know.
Maybe comments and commons?
He was talking about the 3 different types of forums.
Yeah, which 3 types of forums are integrated?
So a threaded discussion, or something like Slashdot, or something, or sorry, something like Reddit.
Oh, so you're talking about what we want to create from this?
Types of forum discussions, yeah.
Okay, so not related
not
to what
existing.
exists in Sakai. Okay.
Okay.
All right, that makes more sense. See, when I read it, I thought he meant 3 different current Sakai discussion tools, which we do kind of have. We have comments on a page, which is discussion-y, and we have the commons now, which is kind of a Facebook discussion-y type tool, and then we have forums.
There's also a good discussion tool on the wiki for anybody who's using that.
Yeah.
So the problem with the wiki.
There's just a little more context.
Yeah, but it's there.
Yeah, the problem with it is that when you duplicate a site or import from site, all those comments stay with it and can't be deleted. So that's kind of a problem. The wiki is its own monster, I think.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so quick context. So Chuck was talking about this in the sense of, do we need other discussion tools that provide unique feature sets? So that could be in the context of, he described Sugi, I think, but I think in other examples would be LTI tools. And we have talked about that before. You know, would LTI tools replace the forums tool? Would that be better? I think the consensus was, if I'm wrong, the consensus was that, well, those don't replicate the same features and functionality that exist in the forums now, like grouping doesn't necessarily work in LTI yet in the same way that the existing forums tool works. And so it's almost a mandate of this group. That's what I brought up, the mandate of this group to kind of improve the existing functionality in the existing forums tool. But it's still, I think it's worthwhile consideration.
Well, but do we need additional complications? I think we might be looking at a more efficient system if we simplify what's there rather than throw in more monkey wrenches.
I agree. I would frankly prefer to have fewer tools. We have had at UVA for a number of years both the forums tool and the JForum discussion and private messages. And it's horribly confusing to users to have 2 very similar tools. And you know, we're finally getting rid of JForum because it's no longer supported and stuff. But I think that if we have fewer tools, we're better off. Unless those tools have drastically different formats, like, you know, the now comment guy had proposed his tool as an LTI forum. It's not a forum. It's very specifically targeted at commenting on particular areas of a document, which is a great tool for classes that need to do that and sites that need to do that, but it's not a replacement for forums. And I think we need to think about that if we're talking about an LTI tool or adding additional tools or splitting off a single tool into multiple smaller ones. We're going to create confusion for users if we have very similar things.
Right.
And
yeah. Tiffany, I read that when I saw the major use cases. I don't know if we really defined those and understand what the differences might be between major use cases. So, I mean, it's hard to say what 3 products you might need, and to cover different types of needs from a forums tool if you haven't how people are really using it and where those things kind of converge or diverge.
yeah, I mean, some of the uses, it depends on the user. I mean, some of the classes have very complicated uses of the forums tool, and I brought a couple of the comments to the previous agendas, but unfortunately I wasn't able to attend those meetings. From one of our instructors who is now using the forums. She has a class that grew from like 20 students to 100. And so she has some very specific wants for what forums can do for at least for grading those students. And I think that's something to keep in mind, is that we have these features in forums that some people are using and really like and using very heavily, whereas others just find it confusing. I understand that. I mean, that's going to be the same way for every tool, right?
I think one thing that we heard early in the discussions when we were trying to assemble kind of that list of the must-have features, the nice-to-have features, and things like that, is it seemed to me that people wanted feature parity with what we have. They didn't want to lose components of the functionality that currently exists in forums. If it could be delivered in a way that's it's more modern and less confusing, then yeah, more streamlined. But I think that people were kind of happy with a lot of the functionality that was offered. And in my mind, I can't really separate out a unique use case that would not use some of those things like grading and groups and permissions.
And statistics, there's even
Yeah.
a lot of statistical information that's specific to forums tool. The analytical stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the statistical information is a big component to grading too. How many discussions did the student respond to? They're required to, post one new discussion every week and then respond to 2 other students and stuff like that. We were discussing in the accessibility group yesterday about, students being required to post a certain word count. And one of the things we found in forums was that, unlike other tools, it has its own word count. Unfortunately, also not keyboard accessible. But, having some of those features and retaining those features, which ones need to be retained? Well, there are 2 word counts on the page, right? So you've got the word count at the top of the CK editor above it, and then you've got the word count in the CK editor itself. So that maybe not so much something we want to keep, but the statistics, the grading, all of that data, I think, is very valuable to instructors. A lot of instructors want more and more analytical data about, like, how many times does a student view this or read this or click this or whatever.
So
I guess
from this discussion, what I'm hearing as a response to Chuck's 2 questions are, yes, we've thought about simplifying it, but no, we're not removing features at this point with this modernized forums project. And the second question is, no, we also don't want to add 2 or 3 other types of forums into this tool as part of this project. This is about taking the current forums feature set, modernizing the UI and the UX of that feature set. Is that correct interpretation?
That sounds right to me.
Me too.
Me too.
So yeah, go submit the pull request.
Yes. Does anyone have other things at Sakai Camp that they recall that we talked about? Not everybody was there, but
I wasn't there on Wednesday, but I was there earlier in the week, and one of the takeaways for me was the discussion about JSF. That's kind of the underpinnings for the technical end of discussions, not the user layer, but the infrastructure behind it, and that is sort of ripe for upgrading. And so we were looking at potentially starting with a smaller tool just to get an idea of the time involved.
Excuse me, Wilma, but excuse my ignorance. JSF, would that be JavaScript?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think it's JavaScript itself, right? Sean, would you
JavaScript
like?
Something. What's the F stand for?
Java server faces.
Yeah.
Faces.
Okay.
Okay.
Sean, I don't know if you have your mic or not, Sean. Can you elaborate on why JSF needs to be done before we can do UI changes? That was actually my question is, can we run those things in parallel? And it sounds like we can't. We really have to wait for that infrastructure to be done because that's going to change how we would restyle the UI.
I think we can work on the UI concepts and mock-ups and stuff like that. It's just the actual implementation of it. I would argue that you would wait until after the upgrade is done for JSF, because newer versions of JSF will work in different ways, and it'll save people from having to rewrite things twice, and may give you newer and more modern options for implementing those proposed interface changes.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, for me it did. I don't know if anybody else has a follow-up.
That answers the question, I think.
We can work on the UI, but we want to wait for the upgrade.
Right. And the thing about JSF is, I believe, Sean, it's like a number of tools. I think the Samigo uses JSF as well. And some other tools.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
There were
There's
some
a few.
JSF.
So we had talked about starting with a small tool
Yep.
to upgrade and to learn the process for the developers to upgrade JSF versions.
Also to get an estimate on the time needed.
Yeah, we could extrapolate it out, and then we would look at upgrading forums, and then we would look at doing Samigo last. Or not last, but after forums is kind of what was decided. Just because Samigo is the beast. But anyways, that's outside of this conversation.
So yeah, starting with the upgrade, smaller tool to help the estimate, which might have been chat or poll or something like that. Really matter what they were going to use. We were going to use the Sakai Virtual Camp funds to do that. So that has, I guess, funding, and we know that might be ready. We might be able to get an estimate for forums this summer, and it seems like maybe by then we would be able to have a plan in place in what we would want to improve. I think that's how it relates.
That was the timeline for the summer. Was the JSF upgrade timeline, or the?
That was in my head, but does anybody else know?
I don't think anybody knows for sure. I think we hope that we can, the Sakai Virtual Conference Funds Committee needs to meet pretty soon. We haven't, we're just getting the group together, and then hopefully if that group agrees that that's the right way to go and puts it out to the community and there's no objections, then we can maybe go out to bid and if we can pick which tool we want to work on first. So I think we have a good set of 3 candidate tools that are relatively small. And then, so I don't think anybody knows. I think we can say we would hope that maybe we can come to a consensus pretty quickly on doing this, and that hopefully there'll be resources available and it will fit within our budget. And then yeah, that maybe we can start working on the forums for 13 would be awesome. But I don't think we have any way to know right now, though.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good point, Sean, is that we can work on concepts and mock-ups and even do some testing before any of the actual development starts. So that can happen while the JSF upgrade is in process.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. And that would give us a real head start. So when we, get to the point where we find out what's involved with the JSF stuff, it'll just push us that much more forward. Sorry, I think my cold is getting to me here. I can barely talk. I thought I was getting better. It's so annoying. It's like I'm feeling better and then I'm feeling worse. But fortunately, none of you will catch it virtually. So. So I think that sounds like a fine idea. I think that's a great idea, a great way to approach it.
Good. Anyone else have anything else they want to know about the JSF upgrade or ideas? Next item was just to follow up on yesterday's call that I wasn't able to make, but I know Tiffany had some notes on, so I pasted those in the agenda. Seems like people had items. Yeah, did you want to go through those? I could read them out too.
Sure, if you want me to. So we talked a little bit about forums in the accessibility call. I'm very interested to hear what ISU's testers have to say about it. Unfortunately, they weren't available. They're going to have some more information for us on a later call. But so we talked about how it's difficult for users, in general, just usability, accessing threads, hard to find the content you need, and it's hard to follow the hierarchy of messages. Also, when you get into authoring a message, that label at the top of CK Editor says message, and it may not be very clear to the user, and it's also not very bold like the other ones above various text fields in CK Editors are usually pretty bold and visible. And then that word count thing that's at the top of the forum post, when you're creating a post, it shows the word count, and that word count is not keyboard accessible. So it can't be read, I assume, by screen readers either. I'm not entirely sure about that. We need to do more testing.
Well, you can't go back to it. If you're in the middle of composing the message and you want to go back and see if you've got your 150 word count, you can't get there from there.
Right. I'll add that as a note too.
So it's somehow not in the tab order.
Yeah.
So there were other questions about what exactly it's read by screen readers.
Yeah, so when you're authoring a question or authoring a message, is it reading that message label on the box? As far as I know, ISU testers found out that it was very difficult for them to post in forums, and some of that had to do with CK Editor reading all of the tools, so that's a separate issue. But we're not entirely sure what they're hearing there when they're authoring messages, and also the descriptions, the short or long description if the instructor or site administrator puts it in a forum or topic. What part of that is being read? How is it being read? Can they access it? Long description, you have to click a link to open it up. How easy is that to access and whatnot?
Okay.
The other thing is that those short and long descriptions are important because instructors often will put, reading in there that they want the students to discuss, and then they have to open it up. And it's very helpful to have it right on that page there with when they're posting.
Okay.
And also, they're the only things that instructors can copy from semester to semester, import from site or duplicate site.
Okay. So it seems to me, I'm wondering what the group thinks. It sounds like this part that we were just talking about what gets read by screen readers, and then the earlier questions about access issues and finding content, findability, user experience. I think overall, yeah, those are user experience questions. And then in the middle, there are questions about Sakai Editor. And so the next item below that is about what's accessible in Sakai Editor and what's available to the screen reader or by keyboard. So do you see those as two sort of groups that we can sort of break those into? Or
yeah, well, so the question was, because Forums has its own word count, right? That's above the post when you're authoring it, and as Terry mentioned, this is not in the tab order, so the user can't get back up to it. Sakai Editor separately has a word count. So the question is, can we get rid of the forum's unique word count, which is not in other tools? Samigo used to have its own word count button that caused problems, and so it was taken away because Sakai Editor has its own word count. So that's one of the things that I was asking is, do we need that?
Well, Tiffany, my question on that would be the same one. Can you, as a non-sighted person or somebody using assistive technology, can you go down and look at the word count and then go back? So it's not just a matter of can we get rid of the top one? Can you maneuver between, you're composing this message and then, okay, what's my word count? And then go back and write some more or edit it some other way. So we need to have that motion back and forth between wherever the word count is and composing the message.
Right. And I think that's something that's then going to apply to other tools, because I think if we do have a word count, we should probably have it elsewhere too. I think that was a very good point you brought up. I think you brought that up yesterday, Terry, didn't you? That about the word count being something that's often required, and
I agree that word count could be valuable in other tools, assignments, there could be requirements there. Tests and quizzes, same as, yeah. Does the rest of the group think about word counts in Sakai Editor?
Which brings up the question to me of how, if Sakai Editor can be tabbed so that those different fields are keyboard accessible and you can go forward and backward and go back to where you want to be, and skip through some of those tools that are at the top that are so problematic with the screen reader.
Yeah, so ISU did work on that, as Ron was mentioning in the meeting yesterday with the Sakai Editor. Yeah, so Dave, that has been implemented in Sakai 12. the ability to change whether you want the CK editor to have the mobile view, reduced view, or the full view, having all the tools in any screen size you're using, or just the default where it is adaptive to the screen size. So, I mean, that was the design to help with the problem of all the tools being read at the top when they're not necessary for a user. But I don't think we've considered really the word count issue before. I never really thought about it until we were discussing the forums one yesterday.
My screen issue, probably. In the comments in the follow-up, I just wrote two questions. I think that it gets to the question Tiffany was asking about CK editor word count, accessible in terms of keyboard and screen reader, and toggling between tools like Tiffany was pointing out, or not toggling between tools, but selecting different elements of the editor. And then the second sort of question about the hierarchy and overall user experience, hierarchy and findability as well. That help capture something y'all were talking about?
Yeah. I mean, the CK editor word count is already there. So you actually have two word counts on the page when you're a cited user posting a message in forums. You have the word count above the CK editor and the CK editor's native one in the bottom right corner. They're already both there.
Okay.
But then we were not sure if anyone can access that if they're not a cited user, or if they're keyboard user. It's awfully tiny. Can you increase the size? Well, you can increase the size by increasing the size of the whole screen, but anyway.
Yeah, it's the one on the lower right's less viewable, less visible for even somebody who's sighted.
Yeah. And I think that questions about hierarchy are also related to the UI, UX, and certainly accessing posts, finding posts. If it's difficult for a visual user, it's going to be difficult for a screen reader user, and probably more difficult, I would assume.
Well, and a low vision reader.
Wrong.
So,
yeah, and a low vision, right.
You've got to consider all grades of
right.
viewability and color contrast and, the whole 9 yards. It's not just whether you're blind or sighted.
Right. Well, yeah, I was trying to express that, but yeah, and also the hierarchy for those with cognitive disabilities. That can be
exactly.
a big thing. Finding content if it doesn't have the right structure of the page.
Yeah, which is where consistency comes in too. So.
Yeah.
So there is a CSS style sheet that CK editor plugin uses that we could edit.
There's a style sheet that CK editor uses that we could potentially edit. That might help. So
one of the developers on the call might verify that that's actually the version that we're using with Sakai, but appears to be it. The demo looks identical at least.
If you're looking at CK editor 4.3 or...
Well, this is a plugin for, it doesn't, so when I Googled it, it came up as a plugin, not core functionality of CK editor.
Okay.
But I'm a little out of my depth as to whether that's or not.
Okay. I'd love to move on to 4, unless we have more things about it, accessibility that we would like to talk about today. Because the one thing I think we really need to probably take action on soon. Is that all right if I move on? That is a yes. Okay, so forums feature requests template for surveys. This is a template I made. I've showed this at a couple occasions, but I almost brought up a really interesting point about this, which is that it only shows a few features to people. What if they get caught up on what's available here? What if we don't show people things that are useful to them at all? What if people have something else that they really wanted to upvote? And I'm trying to reconcile that, I think, with the tension of we want to keep this short and sweet. And by overwhelming them with functions and features that they might not be familiar with immediately. So if we said, for example, pin post, but we didn't include any information about it, we just said pin post, versus we explained, in detail how to pin a post.
Why is the description limited to teachers and students? I mean, like in the 3 features, pick your favorite. It's describing here a scenario as an instructor. A staff member coming to this is going to say, I don't know, I don't care. We've done some user testing on our help, and the response from staff when they were asked to choose between instructor and student help articles was, well, I don't know, which one do I choose?
Okay. Well, can we just first? I wanted to really address the question of is the way that we're structuring the entire thing. It's a really good point, Tiffany, that we want to focus on the verbiage and deal with the details. I think larger picture, I want to make sure that we're on the right track on how we're evaluating mockups that we already have. And I think descriptions. I just wrote this out sort of. I probably should have just put lorem ipsum here, honestly. Should have just put some placeholder text. I definitely want to come back to that, though.
Well,
go ahead.
Some of the mock-ups that I've seen, at least looking at this one, for example, it doesn't really show off some of the features like the long description. I guess that would have to be a separate feature item under there, where there would be a second mock-up that was displaying a long description with some content in it or something like that. As I see here in this mock-up, there's the short description, but not the long description or attachment. And I think those are helpful features for instructors who are having students, discuss a reading or a video or something.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear, though. The question I'm asking, I think, is specifically related to how we're going to structure the surveys, not necessarily the mockups themselves, although I definitely want to delve into that. Just so we actually are making these surveys in a way that are going to yield useful feedback. But I agree, we want to make sure that we include attachments and give people a larger sense of what they're going to be using. I guess looking at this from top to bottom, we're gaining some user, information, or we're learning, okay, what role are they? And then down here, I think this is the part that I really, section 2, picking your favorite feature. Is this the way we want to do it? Do we want to change the feedback that people are giving at the bottom here? And more importantly, how specific do we need to be with the feedback that we're getting back?
Well, I guess I'd rather see, here it says pick your favorite features. So what does that mean to me as a user ultimately? If I pick my favorite features, does that mean the other ones are going to go away? I might have concern for that. I'd rather see a list of options. Do you like this feature? Do you need this feature? Do you want this feature? Something like that. like a drop down or something, where I can say, pinning a post, yeah, that sounds good. I like that. And sort of prioritize the features as what you want to be available or remain available in the case of existing features.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to see them sort of in a ranking where you have to like put them in order of top priority to all the way down to lowest priority.
And then which things do you not use that we might be able to remove is the other
If you're
question.
looking for a question type, if you do on one of those grids, you can say only select one per row. And then you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, and then they have to pick what ranking order.
Yeah, I'm not sure if what you're talking about is there's something called, it's kind of geeky, but I kind of like it, the table of alternative pairs. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, that was the other one that we thought about. I don't know if you can do that in Google Forms. You'd have to probably do something else for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like the elimination method. That's another way to kind of find out which ones are their highest priority overall.
In a way, this is kind of doing, I think, what you're asking, Alma, which is ranking, but I think you're right. Maybe restructuring it so that they can drag and drop is valuable.
Yeah, I don't think you need drag and drop if you have the radio buttons, or vice versa. You don't need radio buttons if you have drag and drop. It just depends on the question types. I think SurveyMonkey actually gives you a lot more question types.
We have use of SurveyMonkey.
I'm concerned about the favorite type of thing, like just the wording of that and the concept of, do I have a favorite? I don't even know. Like, what features would I want as an instructor to stay? I want my grading. I want my descriptions. I want to be able to import my stuff. I mean, I like the features. What can I say? How do I know which one's my favorite?
Yeah, I think one thing we also discussed is separating out new functionality from existing. Because a lot of the things you just mentioned, Tiffany, are existing functionality that people want to keep. And I think that's kind of one question, which items must stay. And then there's another question about, well, what new features would we like to see and which of those are the most sought after?
Yeah.
So if we're worried about like picking a favorite, I could see that being difficult too. Why not just a simple like thumbs up, thumbs down? I mean, when I think about how lots of products manage feature requests, it's just like it's on a forum full of like posts with up and down votes, and then they work on the ones that have the most up votes. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Tri-Sider. Is something like that with some discussion on it, I assume, because we would still want some extra feedback other than just an up and down vote. I mean, is that what we're looking for?
I think that with that, if it's just a simple yes or no, you get the danger of people just saying, oh yeah, that sounds good, that sounds good, that sounds good, and selecting yes for everything. But you don't really get a sense of which one they want more. And in terms of picking what you would want to develop first, I think it's more useful to have people rank them in a preferred order. Like which of the 3 feature requests or which of the following feature requests would you want the most, or what priority would you put these in? Something along those lines.
Kind of forcing their hand, then just vote for one. I mean,
yeah.
Don't say which one's your favorite. I mean, that's a different at one vote, put a vote in. Maybe, I don't know.
Hashtag priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing you could do is kind of the where you give everybody 100 points and they have to spend their points. They could put all 100 on one feature or split them up among different features, but they could only spend 100 points. I don't know how you do that in the form, but I've seen that done before.
Literally give people $100 and then just say, hey, give us all of this in these buckets. Just kidding, that would be terrible. Don't do that. Although that's kind of what we're doing, so that is high stress. The other thing I was going to say is I think Jolie and I might be interested in doing some user experience testing on this, in addition potentially to these surveys. We were wondering if that sounds useful or valuable in order to help, determine, I think more specifically, this list of feature requests is just part of it. I think the must want, the things that we have to have. I think the biggest, most important thing is simplified navigation. That was important on the accessibility call earlier today. So how do we mock that up and then get that in front of people to see, well, what does that mean exactly? If we know that that's top priority, I think we've kind of said. Think that'd be valuable? Get some user feedback on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd like to do user testing, if we had the chance. It would be great to do more user testing. Like I said, I had a really good example from a couple of instructors recently who had some very good suggestions for forums. That they want some more simplified grading options to make it easier for them to grade with multiple graders. In this case, she had this instructor had several TAs, and they're trying to grade different groups of students. So they had to make the forums by topics by group and then grade the groups. But then there's the problem of grades being saved over one another if there are simultaneous graders working. That's another issue. But yeah, user testing would be great.
Cool. Beyond user testing, is there anything else people are thinking we need for evaluating and prioritizing what we want to work on? Because ultimately this is, I think it's going to become a list of requirements, user requirements. So we're kind of almost deciding what people are going to want to develop buy-in on, which is, I think we're at a pretty crucial stage. So does anyone have other ideas on how they'd like to evaluate or any other items they want to talk about today?
Well, I guess just an idea, and since this might not be a good idea, so just putting an idea out here is it pops in my brain is showing.
Bad idea, I can tell me.
It could be. Is showing faculty a few different options of different kinds of forum tools that are out there, and and demonstrating a few, and ask them, are there things about you like about this particular one, and the things you particularly don't like about this particular one, right? So that it's giving them something really tangible to bounce off of, and a few different options of things that are sort of existing. So that idea, like I said, just popped in my head, and so I don't know if it will be a useful exercise or not, but.
One of the things that Chris and I talked about is when we talk about designing some testing for here is not necessarily putting other tools in front of people, but just asking them what they already use, because they've made a choice there, either because it's part of their discipline, it's part of the community they're already a part of, or they intentionally chose a tool, and ask them, do you use a tool like this? What are you using? What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? So that was one of the ideas that we had in that same line of thinking about getting feedback about other tools to draw in ideas and preferences.
Well, the other thing I think that would be useful as user testing would be to take those mock-ups, you take a couple different ones, and then go through the user test, where would you click to find X? What do you give them a scenario, you're in a class, and you need to post 3 times, how do you do that? That's a very common user testing scenario where you give them a question, how do you whatever, and then they have to demonstrate on the screen, just clicking around, how they would access that content. And I think that can be very valuable to see that as a mock-up.
Cool. Is anyone, somebody already worked on some mock-ups, I don't, is that Jeff and Kyle? I mean, is someone already doing a bunch of mock-ups, or are we?
Sure, we took the sort of desired features and we started making some. We have
okay, no, I think I just didn't scroll down far enough to see that. But
mock-up Palooza.
I don't know that we have any mock-ups quite ready though that address our desired goals. Yeah, I feel like we sort of need to.
Yeah, the ones that we have are really very simple, quick, showing just like one potential feature of, one way to visualize it. But none of these are in a state where you could do any user testing.
Right. So, I mean, that's something that we could potentially work on. Some mock-ups that are in the same vein as sort of what Kyle mocked up already, but include some of the functionality that have been mocked up in the old design style, and just see where we land with that. We kind of draw on some of the conversations that were had during the competitive analysis to kind of guide our mock-up design.
Yeah, honestly, we were talking about better user interface here, I think, is basically what would this course look like if it were Sakai.
Yeah.
We talked about the UI inventory project a little bit, and how that aligns to this. We have said, this isn't just about improving the UI. This is about making some decisions around functionality and what we'd like to see. I feel bad. I feel like we probably, I wish we had a little more time to talk about this, but I know we're running out of time here. Yeah, the next steps. I'm seeing Billy and I can start working on all the UX testing, some of the things Neil talked about. Tiffany, if you'd like to be included in that, that'd be really cool. If anyone else wants to sort of jump in and get involved, let us know. Anything else?
can I ask like a sideline question to that? Is there a way we could track UX testing in Jira or something? Like, I feel like if we had a community-wide single way of tracking how to do those, then that might be helpful. I don't know. Jira is so helpful for keeping us all on the same page for how we track lots of different things. I know it's not made to track user testing, but I just see lots of Google Docs, and I think we model after each other, but those aren't tracked in some kind of global database of UX testing, right? So would that be useful? Is that something worth thinking about?
I'm not really sure how Jira would be used to track that, though. If we are we talking about creating a Jira that where different universities are commenting with their results, or I'm not sure I understand.
I've done almost no thinking about it. Jira just came to mind because it's one of the things we have that we, consistently use.
I think that any testing we do should just go on the UX working group page. Like any work that we're doing, we could create a subpage.
Yeah, we have some links off of there from other tests that we've run in the past, and anybody who's doing a UX test can just add a subpage and describe.
I think most people who are participating know to go there, right? Go to that page.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear all of it.
I think most people who are participating in the UX group or interested in participating in those activities go to that Confluence page.
I think so. I don't know for sure. I mean, we could definitely send the link out more and, kind of generate more awareness that it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, just one of those bad ideas that pops into your mind every now and again.
There are no bad ideas, Michael. Just useless ideas. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That was actually valuable. I brought it up.
I love it.
I'm joking.
No, I mean, I like Jira for tracking things. Use it all the time, but I just don't understand how we would track something like this in it.
I think maybe what Michael was thinking about is like GitHub. GitHub got issues, and Jira behaves the same way, and be able to track at least per issue what development or insights people have.
Yeah, it was more about tying a UX test to a set of code changes that was, tested and evaluated and implemented and then iterated upon, and be a,
Maintained.
Definitely. Yeah. Maybe I'll think more on it and actually test and see what would. Chris and I just had a brief talk about it earlier today, and I thought, this actually aligns with our conversation.
That's where I submit every pull request. All of the pull requests, I'll do it. Welcome, Neil. Well, didn't want to turn too late here. I know we got started a little bit late. Any final comments? Announcements? All right, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.